Good morning. Good to have you with us on this Monday. I'm Joe Fryer. Savannah is off. We begin this Monday morning with the latest out of the Middle East. First, talks between the U.S. and Iran broke down over the weekend. Then President Donald Trump said the U.S. will begin blocking all ships leaving Iranian ports from passing through the Strait of Hormuz. That's set to start at 10 o'clock Eastern this morning. Global oil prices surged Sunday night on the heels of President Trump's announcement. Vice President J.D. Vance led the U.S. delegation at the talks in Pakistan. Both he and Iranian officials said that after 21 hours of negotiations, there were significant differences between the countries. A key sticking point, U.S. demands that Iran will not seek a nuclear weapon. Iran says its nuclear program is for civilian purposes. We have a team of reporters and analysts joining us to break down the latest, including the ongoing economic impact here at home. Let's begin with NBC News political reporter Megan Leibowitz in Washington. Megan, good morning. So both sides held that marathon 21-hour session hoping for some sort of deal. They were just too far apart on key issues. So what do we know about those failed peace talks in Pakistan, and where do the negotiations go from here?
Hey, Joe, good morning. So first of all, those talks were not initially expected to last as long as they ultimately did. A source familiar had told NBC that initially negotiators had gone into it thinking that these would be brief talks to sort of tee up future negotiations, but that ultimately it turned into this 21-hour-long marathon session. So in the aftermath, Vice President J.D. Vance said that the U.S. put forward its best and its final proposal. Now, in terms of the mood of these talks, a U.S. official had characterized the talks as tough, but that said that by the end there was a friendly and productive exchange of proposals. Now, the official also telling NBC News that it was clear to the U.S. side that Iran did not seem to understand from this official's perspective that there was this core U.S. mission that Iran can never obtain a nuclear weapon. So that was under discussion a lot this past weekend as well. Now, in terms of what this means moving forward, it's really unclear where future negotiations could stand. Now, there's still more than a week left of the ceasefire, so there is still time for both sides to ultimately come back to the table if they so choose to. But that U.S. official also telling NBC News that during those 21-hour-long negotiations, Vice President J.D. Vance probed Iran for vulnerabilities, and now President Trump will test them, according to this official.
So all this brings us to where we are today. President Trump now planning to block traffic through the Strait of Hormuz starting this morning. What comes next here? What do we know about how the U.S. is actually going to implement this blockade?
Yeah, so this is set to start at 10 a.m. this morning. President Trump laying this out and announcing this yesterday in a post to Truth Social, where he also explained part of his rationale for this, criticizing the fact that Iran has been charging some ships in order to pass through the Strait of Hormuz. He also said in that post, as you can see on the screen, that he has instructed the Navy to track down ships that have paid that toll to Iran, saying in that post, no one who pays an illegal toll will have safe passage on the high seas. Now, President Trump also said yesterday that other countries would help the U.S. with the strait. That remains to be seen. He did not provide more details, and it's something that he said in the past that ultimately has not come to fruition yet. So that's something that we're tracking as well. Also yesterday, he explained a bit more about his rationale in an interview with Fox News. Take a listen to what he had to say.
It's called all in and all out. There'll be a time when we'll have them all come in and all come out, but it won't be a percentage. It won't be a friend of yours, like a country that's your ally or a country that's your friend. It's all or nothing.
So later, U.S. Central Command put out a bit more information saying that this blockade would impact ships that are going to and from Iranian ports and Iranian coastal areas, but that other ships that are not going to and from those areas would still be allowed to pass through the strait. Now, Iran still not seeming to be backing down, with a spokesperson for Iran's armed forces saying that if Iran's ports are threatened, quote, no port in the Persian Gulf and Sea of Oman will remain safe. Now, another big question mark here is the potential for mines in the Strait of Hormuz, in that area that ships are allowed to pass through if they're not going to or from Iran. Iranian ports or coastal areas. It's unclear if Iran has laid mines in those areas. President Trump said yesterday that the U.S. would start to destroy mines in those areas. But, you know, it creates a lot of question marks in terms of will ships ultimately feel safe enough to go through with those threats from Iran and those possibility of mines as well in the Strait, Joe.
And another question mark, the price of oil. It surged Sunday night after the president announced this blockade. What is the president saying about sky-high prices Americans are paying at the pump and what that could mean for the upcoming midterm elections?
Yeah, so in an interview with Fox News yesterday, he really did not seem to project a lot of confidence in the idea of those oil and gas prices coming down ahead of the midterm elections. Take a listen to what he had to say.
So do you believe the price of oil and gas will be lower before the midterm elections?
I hope so. I mean, I think so. It could be. It could be or the same or maybe a little bit higher, but it should be around the same. I think this won't be that much longer.
Now, the economy is always a top issue for voters, and voters are seeing those higher oil and gas prices, with gas up more than $1 per gallon since the start of the war. And it's unclear when those prices could ultimately come back down, especially considering the fact that they're impacted by the Strait of Hormuz, and the future of ships being able to traffic normally through the Strait of Hormuz remains very much in doubt, Joe.
All right, Megan, thank you so much. For more, let's bring in Joel Rubin. He is a former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State and author of The Briefing Book on Substack. Joel, good to have you with us again this morning. Let's pick it up right there. What does this blockade mean for just the global economy, including these high oil and gas prices? And are 2 warships enough to even maintain control of all this?
Yeah, well, look, a blockade is never a good thing for global commerce. Let's just put that out as a baseline. And I think what we're watching right now is President Trump and the Islamic Republic both going back to their corners after the failed talks over the weekend and trying to increase the pressure on the other side to see if they can squeeze some kind of movement to get to a deal. And so this blockade fits within that context, this idea that now we're going to essentially control the waterways coming in and out of Iran, and that Iran can't do that. I think that's an attempt to take away one of the leverage points that Iran has. Clearly, it's going to be difficult. Clearly, implementing it is a highly complicated matter, and it is going to have an impact on global prices, as you just described. But it's an attempt to tell Iran that they don't have total control of these straits and can't use that solely in these negotiations.
So let's talk about the negotiations. We know the U.S.-led delegation led by Vice President Vance. A U.S. official told NBC News it's clear the Iranians didn't really understand the core U.S. objective here. Any deal needed to be anchored by an agreement that Iran never obtain a nuclear weapon. As I mentioned, Iran's always maintained its nuclear program is for civilian purposes. Are you surprised nothing substantial came out of these talks, especially because they lasted 21 hours?
Yeah, you know, Joe, I am a bit surprised that they didn't have some type of agreement on a framework or terms of reference for future talks to get at these hard issues like the nuclear issue in particular. I never thought it was realistic to assume that everything would be resolved all at once at the table, but was hoping that there would be some kind of structure organized at these talks so that the technical experts could go forward. But look, the big picture question that you're pointing out is the nuclear question. It's the one that President Trump's been talking about for a very long time, and President Obama as well negotiated on it. And for the Iranians, that's the price, really, to get a change in American policy. Are they willing to cough up their entire nuclear infrastructure or not? Right now, they say they're not. In the foreign policy community, I have to add, there's a big debate about what is permissible inside Iran's hands. My view is, why would they want to keep a nuclear program if just for peaceful purposes when they can obtain much of those resources through other methods? It only attracts American ire and military action, and I don't think it's really showing much military value for them.
We have to remember we are still in a temporary ceasefire, as Megan mentioned.
Yes.
It expires on April 22nd, so a week from Wednesday. There's time. Where do you see the next round of talks going?
Well, we're going to have, interestingly, tomorrow, smaller talks between Israel and Lebanon. Crucial ones, though, is that fit, and that'll be in Washington, that fit within the broader talks. We'll see how that progresses. That's another pressure point that is between us and Iran. I think we're going to probably see at least one other attempt to try to extend this ceasefire, maybe get to some parameters, maybe some give to see if it's possible. The ceasefire clearly is a respite that the whole global economy economy is enjoying, but it's not resolving the core issues. But I think we'll see the pressure between both the discussions about the straits and the blockade and the talks tomorrow as part of the next week or so to see if they can be extended and get some real clear terms on how they negotiate a fuller deal. But if not, then we might very well back up in military action.
Joel Rubin, good to have you with us. Thank you so much.
Appreciate
Let's bring in Caleb Silver. He is Investopedia's editor-in-chief and People Inc.'s chief business editor and friend of the show. Caleb, good to have you with us. Tell us what we're seeing in the energy markets. How high could oil prices go if this blockade does take effect?
Yeah, we're already seeing them up 7% overnight. You're looking at West Texas Intermediate. That's the oil we use here in the United States. That's up about $104 a barrel. Brent crude, $102 a barrel right now. We had a nice quiet down of oil prices and a little rally in the stock market last week. All that is off right now because these are very uncertain times. This has never happened before. So if the blockade goes on for a while, that means no oil moves through the Strait of Hormuz. Not that any was moving right now. It just means further delays. Expect higher prices, not just for oil, but for all the derivatives, gasoline, jet fuel, fertilizer, everything.
Gas prices are certainly on people's mind. We've already seen them go up so substantially over the last few weeks, above $4 a gallon. How quickly would we see an impact at the pump, and how high could that go?
Yeah, usually you see about a week or two delay before you see the impact at the pump for higher or lower oil prices. We're starting to see that much more immediate these days because of the uncertainty around where prices will be a month, 2 months out. Remember, oil trades in a futures contract. A lot of people who buy oil buy it for delivery in May, June. Those prices are much lower, but right now they're spiking. You got the national average of about $4.13 a gallon for gasoline. Out in the West, it's about $6 a gallon. But all the other incremental costs that go into higher oil prices, consumers are starting to feel that now.
On Friday, we got the March inflation report. We saw 3.3%. That's high, but it was expected because this was the first report that really centered on the war with Iran. But what exactly does that mean? What does it tell us about where inflation is right now? And the Federal Reserve now has to make some tough decisions about what to do. Lower interest rates, that just makes inflation go up even more. So what do they do?
That's right. They're meeting in 16 days, 6 hours and 45 minutes. I'm not counting, you're counting, but they're not going to do anything because they don't know how long this is going to last. And you also got last Friday the consumer sentiment read for the last month, the worst it's ever been. I'm talking worse than the pandemic, worse than the great financial crisis. Consumers feel super dour about this because they don't know where prices are going to be. They just assume that this is a baseline and they're going to go higher from here.
And they're already seeing it when they go to the gas pump or when they're trying to buy their summer travel, airplane tickets, and seeing baggage fees and everything else go up. With all this in mind, what's it looking like on Wall Street this morning, and really a big week for Wall Street in general, right?
Yeah, red. As we go into the week, you have futures trading off about 0.5% across the indexes. Could be worse given the news, but this is a huge week because this is the beginning of earnings season for the last quarter. Companies pulling out their report cards. Earnings are going to look actually pretty good across the boards, except you're going to feel that higher impact of those oil prices on companies, and they'll warn about those higher prices going forward. We'll see how investors react to that.
Is this just a strange time right now because there's so many parts of the economy that are healthy, and yet the consumers are terrified? What's going on right now?
Exactly. You have a lot of profit growth in companies, especially tech companies, but also oil companies who are enjoying these higher oil prices, and consumers were in relatively good shape going into this year, except this notion of higher prices going forward, that causes us to sort of put our hands in our pockets, spend less, and that will slow the economy.
All right, Caleb Silver, good to have you with us. Thank you so much. Now, the war in Iran has created another unexpected kind of conflict. Last night, President Trump lashed out at Pope Leo over his criticism of the war with Iran and the president's hardline immigration policies. In a lengthy social media post yesterday, the president spoke out against the pontiff in a series of personal attacks, calling him weak on crime and terrible for foreign policy. The comments come as the Pope arrives in Algeria for the first stop on a 10-day tour of Africa. NBC's Claudio Luvanga is traveling with the Pope. He joins us from Algeria. Claudio, an extraordinary tirade from the president. Tell us about some of the claims he's making about the Pope and where this all just seems to be coming from right now.
Hey, Joe, well, I think that President Trump made it very, very clear that he does not like Pope Leo. He even said it in that post. It was a very long post. I'll just give you some highlights. Well, he said that he doesn't want to have a Pope who thinks it's okay for Iran to have a nuclear weapon. He doesn't want a Pope. He says that he thinks that it's bad for the U.S. to have attacked Venezuela when Venezuela was sending drugs and criminals into the U.S. He also even said that if it wasn't for Trump, then Pope Leo wouldn't have been elected in the first place, because he said that they elected him just because he was an American, and they thought that he would be the best man to deal with President Trump. Now, to be fair, Pope Leo never really mentioned Trump when he criticized wars around the world. He only mentioned Trump once when he said that he was hoping that the president was looking for an off-ramp with the war with Iran. But clearly, President Trump felt like Pope Leo was talking about him, maybe among other leaders, when he said things like, on Palm Sunday, he said, God doesn't answer the prayers of those who wage war. Then during the prayer, the peace prayer on Saturday, he even said he condemned the delusion of omnipotence becoming increasingly unpredictable and aggressive, and the idolatry of self. Once again, the Pope didn't mention Trump, but Trump must have thought that the Pope was talking about him if he felt like it was okay to come out with this incredible and unprecedented outburst.
But Claudio, you did get to ask the Pope during the flight to where you're going about President Trump and his response to these comments. How did he respond?
Well, that's right. When we travel with the Pope to international flights like this one, to international locations, we get the rare opportunity to ask him direct questions. So when he came at the back of the plane, I did ask him, look, have you seen this post and what do you think about it? Yes, he has seen it, and this is what he answered. Take a listen.
I have no fear of neither the Trump administration nor speaking out loudly about the message of the gospel. And that's what I believe. I am called to do what the church is called to do. We're not politicians. We're not looking to make foreign policies, he calls it, with the same perspective that he might understand it. But I do believe that the message of the gospel, blessed are the peacemakers, is the message that the world needs to hear.
And Claudio, so we heard the Pope's reaction there. I'm not sure if you can hear me, but beyond the Pope, what has been just the broader reaction from the Catholic Church and members of the Catholic community?
Hey, Joe. Well, literally, the Pope said what you just heard about an hour ago. We just landed half an hour ago here in Algiers. So I think that the Catholic world is just waking up to the reaction, first of all, to the post of President Trump, and then to the reaction of Pope Leo. So we'll see, later in the day what the reactions will be. What I can tell you is that that post did not deter the Pope to speak out against conflicts. He's just been to the Museum of the Independence here in Algeria, that is the independence from French rule, where the Pope has said once again that called again for peace and dialogue, and said that the continuous wars that are affecting the world right now should stop before they create more resentment for generations to come, Joe.
And Claudia, while we have you, this all comes ahead of the Pope's visit to Africa. Tell us about this trip, why the Pope is embarking on this tour.
Well, the Pope is, after Algeria, is going to visit Cameroon, Angola, and Equatorial Guinea. It's going to be a long trip. It's about 11 days and 11,000 miles. Well, the main themes are going to be interfaith dialogue to promote peace between, dialogue between Christians and Muslims. Peace, of course, is going to talk about peace a lot. And, of course, the support to the small Catholic communities, as in Algeria, but bigger in other countries. The beginning of a very long trip, and it has started with a bang, John.
All right, no kidding. And Claudio getting some news-making reaction from the Pope on that flight. Claudio, thank you so much. Representative Eric Swalwell is officially dropping his bid to become governor of California. The Democratic congressman suspended his campaign yesterday after multiple women came forward accusing him of sexual misconduct. That includes a former staffer who told the San Francisco Chronicle that he sexually assaulted her twice when she was too intoxicated to consent. NBC News has not verified her allegations, but did confirm her identity and that she did work for Swalwell for several years. Swalwell denies the allegations. In a post on X, he apologized to his family and supporters for, quote, mistakes in judgment, but said he will fight the serious false allegations that have been made. His decision comes after dozens of former staffers signed a public letter on Sunday calling on him to drop his campaign and resign from the House. Swalwell has also faced mounting pressure from several members of Congress to step down. The Manhattan District Attorney's Office says it is investigating the allegations. A gorgeous day is on tap here in New York, so let's get a look at what to expect for the week with your morning News Now weather. Meteorologist Andrea Romero joins us now with a very nice-looking forecast. Andrea.
Definitely for New York, Joe. We're experiencing temperatures that will be in the 70s here locally, but across the country it's a different story. In fact, the big weather story is the chance of severe weather, not only for today, but for the next 3 days. We have the chance of some strong to severe storms developing. These storms will definitely intensify overnight. Heavy rain, the flood risk will be present for the Great Lakes, and the bullseye for the enhanced risk is over here over parts of Minnesota and Wisconsin, with the main concern being the threat of some damaging hail, some wind gusts, and of course the chance of some isolated tornadoes. Now, as this storm system continues to travel on eastward, the frontal system will be extending from Michigan all the way to Texas, and these supercells will be bringing the threat of tornadoes for tomorrow. So it'll definitely be an expanded risk for tomorrow across all this area, especially for parts of Iowa, into Illinois, and into parts of Wisconsin, where we could see those tornadoes develop and also have that hail threat in that area. Then for Wednesday, the threat will diminish a little bit, but will still be present for some areas. We're expecting downpours all the way from Dallas to Detroit, with some widespread area of heavy rainfall. And of course, the slight risk will be expanding all the way from Oklahoma City into Cedar Rapids and into the Great Lakes. So as far as rainfall with these strong, heavy storms in the Great Lakes, along with the melting snow, that's where the main flooding concern is. We do have some rain falling this morning over the area. We have some flash flood warnings in effect, but we're expecting flood watches to continue through Wednesday with those accumulating rainfall totals. As far as the temperatures, we saw that chilly air in the western part of the country, quite different from that warm temperature that we are expecting from the Rockies all the way into the eastern coast, 10 to 25 degrees above average. Joe, we're feeling those warm temperatures here locally. We're expecting temperatures to continue to go up. Look at New York tomorrow, 81 degrees. That's 20 degrees above average. In other parts of the country, we're expecting similar temperatures with some record high temperatures for many, many locations, as we can see in that area, that will be continuing throughout this week and maybe even getting warmer as we continue. And of course, with the warm air, we do have that fire risk that develops, and new fires may spread rapidly with those dry conditions, those gusty winds that we're expecting in those areas.
All right, Andrea, good to have you with us. Thank you so much. The crew of Artemis II is back on Earth, reunited with their families after 10 days in space. The astronauts spoke publicly for the first time this weekend after that history-making mission around the far side of the moon. NBC News correspondent Valerie Castro has more on their remarkable journey.
This morning, mission accomplished.
Houston integrity splashdown, sending post-landing command now.
Splashdown confirmed.
The astronauts of Artemis II safely back on Earth after a history-making trip around the moon and a Friday splash landing in the Pacific.
I have not processed what we just did. The gratitude of seeing what we saw, doing what we did, and being with who I was with, it's too big to just be in one body.
The crew, Mission Commander Reed Weissman, pilot Victor Glover, and mission specialists Christina Koch and Jeremy Hansen, going farther in space than any other humans after a 10-day voyage.
This is the furthest I've been away from Reed in a long time.
The four speaking publicly for the first time since their return to Earth during a ceremony at NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston on Saturday.
Ladies and gentlemen, your Artemis II crew.
Weissman still finding the words.
I have absolutely no idea what to say. This is 24 hours ago, the Earth was that big out the window and we were doing Mach 39, and here we are back at Ellington at home.
This trip capturing never-before-seen images of our constant satellite. Next up, Artemis II, set to launch next year with plans to orbit the Earth while testing lunar landing equipment. And in 2028, Artemis IV, the vessel that will carry a team back to the surface of the moon.
This is the start of a new era of human space exploration.
These space explorers breaking new barriers while remembering there's no place like home.
Being 200,000 plus miles away from home, like before you launch, it feels like it's the greatest dream on Earth. And when you're out there, you just want to get back to your families and your friends.
All right, thanks to Valerie for that report. By the way, NASA expected to announce the crew for Artemis III soon.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.